Hello, everyone. This is Scribe. Thank you for joining me on this early Sunday morning. Um, I can't remember if this was as early as I started the last one. So if you're awake, thank you. If you're not awake and listening to this later, I apologize for not starting later. But I woke up and it was on my mind, so I thought I would begin. Um, so just as a precursor to everything else, I do not plan on doing this every Sunday by any means. It just happened to be the case that after last week's little adventure with the Netflix series, it got me to thinking about another specific series that I had watched a few years ago that left an impression. And on reflection, it also has a lot of similarities to Jessica Jones. And in thinking about how those two things combined, it sort of increased my recollective ire for the show. So I thought I would give a brief, relatively to the Netflix thing, brief overview of why I thought The Fall was bad. Now, The Fall is a detective show, sort of. It's a crime thriller drama, not really a mystery so much. There are mysterious elements. Um, And the thing that I guess irritates me the most about The Fall as compared to, say, Jessica Jones is that up until a certain point, The Fall was pretty good. I didn't mind it so much. There was a lot of things in there that I actually appreciated quite a bit and I was impressed with. But it was the end, it was the final act of the first season that introduced the poison tree aspect to the rest of everything that followed. And it's something that I couldn't ignore being I think, relatively intelligent individual who likes crime stories and likes logic and likes things that make sense. And The Fall did not deliver on that. Um, so first, I've only have some notes here. The only thing I'm going to be referring to as I go over this is some brief list of notes that I made about points I want to hit, and I do have the list of episodes from Wikipedia up to sort of remind me as the story progresses. So I'm not reading somebody else's review, and I understand this show's been out a while. There have been a lot of reviews printed out there. I haven't read any of them. I have my the most I've seen are like headlines talking about it being a feminist show and things like that. But I'm not referring to anybody else's review. So if this is old news to you, I apologize, but this is just what's on my head. Um, Before we go into that, though, let's say hi to the people in the chat who decided to show up this early in the morning. First, to Crazy Cat Gentleman. You were first. You are awarded the first prize for making yourself known in the chat. William Stenchever, the Geek Thulu. Who else? I thought I saw. Oh, yes, Laura Bones. Hi, Laura. Serenity Lotus. Hello. Fwaki. Hello. Linuggets. Hello. Sora Luna 606. Hello. All right. So I'll be attempting to keep an eye on the chat as I go, but when I'm focusing, I tend to sort of just look at the microphone like it's my enemy as I'm ranting along. So if I miss a thing or two, I apologize. I'll scroll up as things go on. Oh, and hello, Mike C. You just showed up. Okay, so as I said, The Fall is a detective show, a mystery show, a crime drama. Uh, British television, it's produced in Britain. British television has a very long and respectable history of crime dramas. And it also has a very long and respectable history of crime dramas with female detectives. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Although, if you want really consistent, relatively quality crime drama with female lead detective, I highly recommend the Prime Suspect series. I used to watch that with my mother way back in the day, and that is a very good show. Oh, and Miss Marple for sort of like the that kind of stuff. Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot of good series that have female lead detectives. Not that that matters, but this show, The Fall, wants you to remember that our hero is female all the time. Okay. So the similarities to Jessica Jones, before I get into the plot. And on reflection, it is quite striking how many similarities there are in both characterization and narrative devices and supporting characters between Jessica Jones and The Fall. So, first and foremost, you have our protagonist. Like Jessica Jones, Stella Gibson, played by Gillian Anderson of X-Files fame, is a emotionless, somewhat vulcanized, and I mean Star Trek sense, not rubberized. That'd be funny. Um, Ice Queen. You know, she's just this sort of cold, straightforward bitch for the most part. And our cold Ice Queen, like Jessica Jones, is also in pursuit of a rapist, though unlike Kilgrave, who is sort of the analogous walking sense of rape and non-consent or whatever. Our rapist in The Fall is an actual rapist and murderer. So that should make SDA happy because you actually get to see the rape. So that makes it all worthwhile. And you know, that's fine. I love you, SDA. So those are two standout similarities to both shows. But unlike, I should also say that the supporting cast in both shows run two ways. If the supporting character is a male, just like in Jessica Jones, from my observation anyway, um, the male is either a complete asshole, running from the top of the asshole scale being the actual murderer himself, down to just being jerks at work kind of thing, or complete spineless guppies. And there is one particular spineless guppy in The Fall, which I will get into details on shortly. Rare is the instance where a male character in The Fall is a decent person or a nice guy, or if he is even portrayed that way, that he is given any depth at all, other than just sort of window dressing. And of course, conversely, all the female characters in the show, and it's hard for me to imagine one that wasn't, is either a victim, a brave victim, or a stalwart career woman type person, something like that. Now, none of this inherently is bad per se, except for the fact that it is consistent throughout the entire show. There's no variability, and it just seems, that stuff turned me off a bit. However, it wasn't a deal breaker because the quality of the show overall, that first season, by the way, there are 3 seasons. The first season consists of 5 episodes. The latter 2 seasons each consist of 6 episodes. Each episode is approximately about an hour long. So you're looking at 17 hours covering this whole thing. There is so much filler in both the second and third seasons that it almost feels like there shouldn't have been a third season. They could have gotten all the storytelling of the second and third seasons basically pushed into the second season if they'd done it right. And I should also mention, every episode, the entire series, is written by one guy. And his name is Alan Cubitt. Now, Alan Cubitt wrote all of season 1, but he did not direct all of season 1. All of season 1 was directed by a man named Jakob Verbruggen. I'm probably completely butchering that name, but seasons 2 and 3, it's all Alan Cubitt. Alan Cubitt both wrote and directed both latter seasons. So, as far as the story is concerned, as far as the overall narrative and chain of events and everything else, it is all fair to put all the responsibility onto one person, which makes things a lot easier. Because I couldn't, there's no out here of, they changed writers halfway through the season, or this episode that has this big reveal was written by someone different than the series creator or something. No, one guy, and all credit to him for going through the amount of effort it takes to do this kind of project. But everything I talk about here can be attributed to one person's responsibility, let's say. Going back to the chat briefly, Hello, Scotch. Hello, Amada. Nice to see you. Anybody else that I missed in the last few minutes? How is everything, Scribe Light? Everything's fine, Scotch. My voice is a little froggy, more so than usual. Ribbit, ribbit, because I've just woken up a few minutes ago. Jonathan David Lee Aldridge, hello. In my deep, very white monotone, baritone, not monotone. My brain's still waking up too, so. All right, so let's get into the general gist of things. Let me check my notes here. The thing that is different from Jessica Jones and is more similar to Daredevil is that, unlike Jessica Jones, where we have this sort of tunnel vision from generally the perspective of our protagonist trying to find our villain, in The Fall, we get both sides. We get to watch our villain operate, not only target a victim, but stalk them. We get to watch him go through his procedures and ultimately him raping and killing his victim. And that part is interesting because we get to see both sides are developed, sort of like Daredevil and Kingpin. You get to see Stella at work, and you get to see our villain Paul at work as well. Now, Paul is played by Jamie Dornan, and if you don't know who Jamie Dornan is, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly, not too long after The Fall came out, Jamie Dornan went on to play Christian Grey in 50 Shades of Grey. Now, that is an interesting evolution of career, going from playing a rapist murderer to playing a somewhat psychotic BDSM freak. But hey, nice work if you can get it. And in all honesty, Jamie Dornan does an excellent job in this show, in this first season, and actually overall the seasons, as far as his acting goes, and as far as how he handles what he's given to do. He's a fine actor. I have no problem. And really, in that first season, watching him operate was, sort of that darkly twisted, mesmerizing. You want to see what he does next kind of thing. And like I may have mentioned previously, the reason that The Fall kind of infuriates me more than, say, Jessica Jones or something, is that it was good. It was really good up until the end. And then the end completely insulted my intelligence. Whereas everything prior had been a relatively engaging, relatively well written, relatively entertaining ride between these two characters and sort of the hunt for the bad guy kind of thing. The ending just sucked. But we'll get there. I promise we'll get there. That's the whole point of this. I'm going to cover the first season in some depth. I'm going to cover the latter seasons not in so much depth, because basically they are fruit of the poison tree after the end of the first season, and I won't have as much to say. Okay, all that is preamble. Let us begin. So, Gillian Anderson plays Superintendent Stella Gibson. She's a senior detective from the Met, and she is assigned, or I guess she is requested to come in as a specialist to help investigate the death of Alice Monroe, one of the first victims of our killer. She's specifically invited to come and help out this police department by Jim Burns, who is played by John Lynch, who is a very good actor. I mean, John Lynch is a very good actor. The character he is made to play, oh man. So anyway, Jim Burns invites Stella to come and help as a specialist, because apparently she has some skills that acquit her to being on this case and helping out where nobody else can figure out what's going on with this murder. She comes in and she starts acting like, the expert. And she's going to show how this one case that she was brought in on is actually just one of a pattern of cases, and that they're all related, and that they all should be considered as one suspect or something. There's no reason why Stella Gibson had to be the one to make this observation, but apparently she's the only one that sees the pattern for some reason. It's not really, as far as I recall, it's never really given a reason as to why her perspective is so special. I mean, she doesn't have any supernatural powers, although something like her ability to attract people to her side might be a supernatural power given her attitude. But anyway, so just conveniently, she comes in and starts quote unquote investigating. And I say quote unquote investigating. Well, we'll get there. So one of the first things she does is she ends up at a crime scene and she catches the eye of a detective there. Let's see, do they give his name again? Oh yes, James Olsen. Now I think it's funny that he's called Jimmy Olsen in this. I can't remember if they make a joke of that. I hope they do. It's been a while since I've watched this, but it's so seared in my mind that the basics are all there. So this detective on the scene of this crime scene, they start talking to each other, and she does her impression of flirting and gives him her hotel room number and I believe the key. And then he, well, like a lost puppy, just follows her up there, sniff, 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 and then they have sex. So one night stand, whoop de doo, okay. Um, so that's kind of, and now at the same time, we're also watching Jamie Dornan or Paul Spector. They named the bad guy Spector, because it was a little bit ham-handed to me that they named him like a ghost because he's like the mysterious killer and everything. But okay, whatever. So Paul Spector, he's stalking his victim, and he's you know being a very creepy stalker serial killer guy. I mean, I cannot compliment enough the visceral, creepy, tense nature of all the stuff dealing with Paul Spector, our villain in the first couple of episodes. Watching what happens and what he does and how he does it is, I mean, it's one, like I said, it's one of those things that you just can't look away. It's evil, it's violent, it's deplorable what he's doing, but it's so, it's like watching a slow moving horror movie. It's awesome. It's really good. Um, let's see who else we got in the chat. Oh, Golden Slumber, hello. His Kitten, hello. All You Need is here, hello. Who else we got? Anybody else in this? Better Red Than Dead. Hello, Better Red. Let's see. Donald Hump, Barney Knight. Russell, it's Russell. Hi, Russell. All right. And Destiny. Hi, Destiny. Nice to see you. So by the second episode, there are some subplots going on in the police department, specifically about police corruption. And some of the detectives in the department are participating in some illegal activities. These things are not related to the investigation of the serial killer, but they add some more, flavor and color to the department, make it a bit more like a living entity that's not just focused on one thing. It also gives our main character some other stuff to do. Now, in the course of this sort of corruption, our one night stand guy, James Olsen, gets involved. And as a consequence, he gets assassinated. Now, none of this has anything to do specifically with our hero or the serial killer. It's just one of the side plot kind of things, which is fine. But it is quickly thereafter discovered that he had a one-night stand with this lead superintendent detective, Stella Gibson, the night before, and he's also a married man. So he was cheating on his wife with Stella Gibson. He's an asshole. And of course, he became rabidly obsessed with her after this one-night stand because during the course of the second episode, he's like trying to get in touch with her, and she's ignoring his messages and all this other stuff because he's just a man. He was just sort of a fling kind of thing. And so Stella is confronted by our friend Jim Burns, who is supposedly her supervisor, or at least her superior in this situation, but he always acts awfully subservient to her. Gosh, yeah, really, really, really subservient. It'll get worse later. So as she's being talked to about the fact that this guy got killed, she's completely cold. Stone cold. Like, well, whatever. It happened. Da-da-da. Nothing about this character is endearing, as far as I'm concerned. Not her attitude, not her detectiving skills. Nothing she does in this show has an endearing quality to it. And like I've said before about like Jessica Jones and comparing her to the Punisher or something, even if you have someone who's unlikable as a person, they have to have some aspect to them that is relatable, that has some measure of empathy towards either other people or that the audience can have towards them. If you make them an absolute block of stone, and it feels like, again, this is all my speculation, it feels like the notion that to make a strong character, quote unquote strong, and SDA and I talked about this on her Jessica Jones stream, a strong character has to be an emotionless character or something. Or like that's the only way you can portray a woman in contrast to how women are usually portrayed to underline them as a strong character. They have to be tough. They have to be ruthless. They have to be, uncompromising or something. And this somehow, these extreme interpretations of masculinity have to be then placed upon a woman in order to make a woman not only a strong character, but also make sense as a lead character. Again, this is my interpretation because after seeing The Fall and later on seeing Jessica Jones, um, this is a common pattern things fall into, and I don't think it serves either the character well or the story well. But of course, again, it depends on how you want to interpret the word strong when you're talking about a strong female character. Do you mean strength as far as like strength of character, not necessarily the character that's written, but the character of the persona being created? Do you mean strength as far as physical strength? That somehow compensates for whatever emotional weakness that is usually attributed to women? Or do you just mean a character that is well developed? I think it should be a character that's well developed, whether they're strong or a wuss or whatever else. You can have a really interesting and compelling character who's not a superhero, for lack of a better phrase. Anyway, so with the death of our one night stand and the implication that Jim Burns has had some past relationship with Stella, and I mean past relationship with Stella, and he too is a married man. We find out over the course of the first season that he had a fling first time with Stella, and he is completely and absolutely beholden to her still. I mean, he is like, there are scenes where he is like breaking down crying, and he says something to the effect later on in the series of, "Why do you have such control over men?" And I mean, when that scene showed up, I could not believe it. I wanted to throw something at my television. It was so, I, you know, the character they'd established at that point, I could believe that this character would say something like that, but it was so melodramatic, and he's like having a nervous breakdown over how he can't get past her, he can't get over her, and she's just standing there. I mean, except for that one little flirtation thing with Jimmy Olsen at the beginning of the series, you never see her do anything seductive to attract these people's attention. I mean, I suppose just looking like Gillian Anderson is good enough for some people, but she's just stone. She's just a block of ice. It never makes any sense to me why anybody likes her, wants to spend time with her. Maybe they respect her on a professional level for some reason, and I underline the phrase "for some reason." Um, but it never makes any sense. All right, so I'm going to move away from Stella for a moment and focus on our villain, and we'll also pause to look at the chat. Let's see. Did anybody ask anything that I'm missing out on? Floggy asks, Scribe, what's your opinion of the Joss Whedon series Dollhouse with Eliza Dushku? I've actually never watched it, so I have no opinion. I'm afraid. I'm going through the latest, or at least the latest available season of Archer. If I can find Dollhouse on Netflix or elsewhere, I'll take a look. I just finished up Legion and working on Archer now. So Legion was really good. Let's see. Anything else that I'm not seeing? I need to say hi. Da, 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 hang on. Da, 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 da. Better read than dead says, I'm well developed. That's what happens when you enter mid conversation. Okay. Morning, Angela. Hello, Data Wasteland. Okay, so our villain Paul Spector is, well, a brutal rapist and murderer, and Jamie Dornan does an excellent job playing this character. By day, he is a bereavement counselor, which is a really weird setup. So by day, he's helping people out with their grief, and by night, he is causing people grief. So um, it's an interesting contrast. I don't know if it makes a lot of makes a lot of sense psychologically, but then I'm not a psychologist. But our villain has a wife, and I believe two children, two small children. His wife is completely unaware of his activities, obviously. Our villain is in ridiculously good shape for someone who is basically a paper pusher at a governmental sort of service kind of thing. And many compliments are made about this. Of course, he keeps in really good shape so he can manage the physical requirements of his hobby, let's say. And he's a very sinister villain. He's manipulative. He's intelligent. He is very clever, also completely insane in some cases, but not to the sense that you'd think that he was like delusional or crazy. There's only one thing in the show that sort of indicates that he's having really nutso thoughts, and it's this diary that he keeps that is sort of like his treasure chest, both of the little trophies he takes from his victims and drawings and notations and all types of things about what's going on in his mind. So as far as anyone knows, he's just a normal guy doing normal stuff, and he's got a normal life. One of the subplots on the serial killer side is that his babysitter that takes care of his kids, who's like a 14 or 15-year-old girl, as far as the story is concerned, has a super duper crush on him. And I mean, like, super duper inappropriate crush on him. And he leads this crush on over the course of several episodes, culminating in almost consummation. But it goes badly pretty quick, and he hurts her and scares her off. And I mean, scares her off in such a way that, yeah, she's not coming back. Not in the sense that she's dead. She's not dead. I got to make that clear. He doesn't kill the girl, but he does get to that edge of his usual proclivities, and she runs off, heartbroken and scared, etc. This is discovered quite quickly by his wife, and this becomes the point of contention that starts, threatening their marriage and causes the drama on his normal side of his life. This will eventually lead to the idea that he and his wife and his kids should leave town for a while or get a change of scenery or whatever. And that happens right at the end of the first season. But we'll get there. Okay. So we have our protagonist, Ice Queen. We have our antagonist, brilliant, elusive serial killer. All right. Now, the idea is, in crime stories like this, that the good guy catches the bad guy through a procedural process of, gathering evidence, connecting the clues, tracking the person down, and then having some kind of big showdown. All right. That doesn't happen in this first season. Okay. So all this tells me is that this trilogy of seasons was planned out. Not planned out very well, but planned out. Because our hero and our villain never meet until the end of the second season, if I recall. I mean, she might have seen a picture of him or something prior to that, but she doesn't actually meet the guy until the end of the second season. So there's all this buildup, which is fine if they had earned it, which they don't. Let's see. Data Wasteland, did you see the Archer Magnum PI parody? I haven't, unless it was... I'm just starting on season 7. I haven't... all those shows run together after a while, and I haven't watched season 6 since last year. So if that was buried somewhere, I haven't seen it. If I did see it, I don't remember. Sweeper Steven, what up? Let's see. Golden Slumber has to check her leg of lamb. Well, it's good that you're eating well. Did anyone watch Alias? Laura asks. I never did. I always heard good things about it, but I never did watch it. I never watched a lot of network television series over the early 2000s because I didn't have TV or regular cable at that time. All right. So, what does our detective do to find our killer? Nothing. And I'm not kidding. Stella Gibson, Gillian Anderson's character, she goes to crime scenes. She makes observations. She stands in front of tables with pictures and notes and papers and cork boards full of photographs of the victims and so on. She has minions in the department that go and do stuff, collect evidence and that kind of thing. She doesn't do anything. Over the course of the entire series, the amount of actual detective work that Stella Gibson performs is zippo. She is present at crime scenes. She is present in the police department. She is present when they're going over evidence. She doesn't do anything. At no point is there some moment of brilliance or some moment of, this is why this person is the Sherlock Holmes of this situation, or this is why this person was brought in as a specialist because they have this insight or something. No. Nothing she does, as much as it is, could not have been done by any competent detective with any years of experience. And mostly the stuff that is discovered, the stuff that is brought to the table, so to speak, is collected by her minions. They actually go out and do the footwork. It's sort of like Jessica Jones having Malcolm get rid of Reuben's body. She doesn't do the dirty work. She has somebody else do it for her. Okay, she's got all these minions that are willing to do things for her, either because it's their job or because they're beholden to her for some reason, because she's her, I guess. Yeah. And this explains a lot towards getting to the third act of the first season. Because our killer is completely elusive. They have no idea who he is. He keeps killing people, but he leaves no evidence behind. He's very careful, very meticulous. He uses a condom. He's always wearing gloves. He specs out his crimes before he does them. He researches his victims. I mean, he is a meticulous killer. They have nothing, absolutely nothing to identify this guy. So then, over the course of the show, we meet a couple other characters, and one of them is a motorcycle riding forensic sort of coroner type character. And she and Gillian Anderson's character go to a bar at one point, and there's sexual tension because our forensic investigator is a lesbian, I guess, or bisexual perhaps. Why there is sexual tension, again, I have no idea. Stella Gibson is the most unattractive person based on her attitude and everything else. I mean, if your only concern is aesthetics, yeah, Gillian Anderson, for days, redhead, I'm right there. But as a person, she's completely deplorable. Repellent. She this attitude and this person that she is. It's like, why would you be attracted to this person? If you just want a one night stand, okay. But becoming obsessed with her, like Burns is, and these other people, and the other people ended up having like one night stands with her. It's like, I don't get it. There's nothing attractive there. But anyway, so we're introduced to this forensic science coroner type medical examiner person. And she just kind of shows up a little bit here and there, but she becomes very important very quickly by the last two episodes of the show, because out of the blue, in the middle of this investigation where there are no clues, There's no leads. They have no idea. Our star detective is completely lost in the woods on this one. Our medical examiner friend mentions to our detective that she has a friend who had some negative experience in college with a boyfriend, that the details of which sound familiar. So our detective goes and talks to this friend of the friend, and this character's name is Rose Stagg, who is married with a child, I believe, and maybe one or two children. And Rose Stagg describes to Stella Gibson the details of a boyfriend she had back in college, years and years ago, and how this boyfriend was sexually aggressive and got very violent with her at one point, choking her and so on. She stayed with him for a time after that, but eventually things fell apart. Now, again, I'm looking back at this from several months after having watched. I've watched the first season twice now. Once when it first came out, and then again to sort of refresh my memory when the third season finally came out. And I watched everything again. And so this former victim of some boyfriend from college, whose name she knew as Peter, but didn't know his last name. Conveniently enough, she had no idea what his last name was. Describes this encounter, this boyfriend, to Stella Gibson. And for reasons that are just kismet, Stella Gibson believes from this one description of this one encounter with some guy that this lady knew years ago, who happened to be the friend of the medical examiner, who happened to be her friend, is also our killer. Okay. I'm having a bit of a Iron Fist, Madame Gao kidnapping moment here, because the number of coincidences and convenient arrivals of devices to make this all work is, even as I was watching this the first time, and especially as I was watching it the second time, started making me feel very, very angry. Because, like I said, up to this point, the show was very compelling. But then we get to the 11th hour of the first season. We know we're not going to have the big capture. It's becoming obvious. I'm watching the number of episodes count down and how we're not getting any closer to our killer. And again, this is all written by one guy. So there's only one guy to hold accountable for this writing. Now, in the course of the investigation, a special operation has been set up specifically to find this serial killer. And our serial killer is aware of this. I mean, he's seen Stella Gibson on TV. He has been sort of entertained by their chase after him and his ability to avoid them, etc. They try to bait him through the media, which is not an unknown tactic. You know, if you know something about the serial killer, you're trying to draw them out or make them contact you, that kind of thing. So they put some implications about his, I believe it was either his character, I mean, beyond the fact that he's a serial killer, or his impotency or something like that. They put this stuff out in the media, and this draws him to contact the police, and they set up a line or something so he can contact them. So in the last episode of the first season, our villain decides to call in and gloat because he's about to leave town. He's gotten away scot-free. They have nothing on him. They don't know where to find him. It's obvious they're not going to find him. They're not going to get him. They're not going to catch him. He knows it. And this is the point at which he and his family are about to leave town over the babysitter thing. Get some space, try to, rebuild their marriage, get a change of scenery, etc. So he's just about to leave town. He calls our detectives, and I'm summarizing things a little bit here, but over the course of this little relay race, eventually it's him and Stella on the phone together for the first time. This is the first time they've ever had anything close to contact, face to face, etc. Let me back up and look at the chat real quick. Monkey, hello, Monkey. Hello, SDA, hello. I've mentioned you heavily in this because a lot of what we talked about in the Jessica Jones stream has come up in this. Who else is here? Elephant. Hello, Elephant. Yeah, the gang is all here. Hello, everybody. All right. So the very first time that our hero and our villain contact each other, our villain is calling to gloat. He's calling to gloat because he has done it. By all realistic rights set up in the storyline, our villain has gotten away with murder, multiple murders, with an entire police force chasing him, and this one guy has outsmarted them all. I mean, it shows the incompetence of the police in this story and also the brilliance of our killer. And it also completely underlines the ridiculousness of this deus ex machina former college girlfriend victim who happened to be a friend of the forensic examiner who happened to get in romantically with our lead detective. Da, 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 da. I mean, the UK and Britain, it's not exactly a small country. There are a lot of people in there, but it just happens to be the case that a former girlfriend of our killer happened to be a friend of a forensic pathologist or whatever that just happened to be on the same team as our star detective who hasn't detected anything over the course of the show and hands her information on the killer. So our hero and our killer are on a phone call together, and if I'm remembering correctly, it is an isolated phone call. He's not being traced or whatever, or they're trying to get a trace, but it's cell phones and whatever. So he taunts her, he gloats. She's alone, standing out on a bridge, I believe, on the phone, and he knows she's got nothing, and she knows she's got nothing. But what does she do? What does she do with the information that she has been given by this ex-girlfriend of maybe the serial killer back in his younger days? What does she do? She tells him. She tells the serial killer, the unidentified, unknown, untraceable serial killer, what she knows or believes she knows about him and his past via the details given to her by this former girlfriend, victim, etc. That at one time he went by the name Peter, and that he attended this college, and that he did this, 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 and this. She gives him everything that she knows about who she thinks he is, except for the name of the person who gave her this information. Except by telling him everything she knows, she has given him the name of the person who told her this. Okay? I cannot. This person is supposed to be an experienced detective, police officer, brilliant, yada, yada, yada. You have one potential witness, one potential person that can tie her information to the killer of several women at this point, whose identity you don't know. And you tell the killer, who you still do not have a trace on, everything he needs to know to identify the one witness that must be working with police. Now, I don't need to tell any thinking person why that is a bad idea. But the show apparently thinks it's a good idea. The show apparently thinks that me, the audience, is not going to look at this and think, the fuck are you doing? What are you doing? Everything to this point has been, our detective's been ineffectual as a detective, obviously, if she had to get the information to identify this guy, but not even identify him, just random facts that may apply to this guy from a third-party witness that you didn't even find yourself, but had to be handed to you by a supporting character. It's the laziest writing I could possibly imagine. And the thing is, like I said, what makes this more infuriating is that up to that point, the show was on a pretty good click as far as I was concerned. It was interesting to watch. The bad guy was compelling. The good guy was but at least the police drama aside was, interesting to a certain extent. But then we get to the end and it's like, okay, so you've handed her all the information she has. She didn't detect it herself. And then she hands it all to the serial killer. What do you think is going to happen? And that's where the season ends. Ends right there. and we're left with, he's on his way out of town, and she's standing out on a bridge, and that's it. Let me take a breather for a second. Boobs are bobs now. Okay, SDA, whatever you say. Oh yes, boobs. All about the boobs. I have to scroll up here a bit. I've missed all this. Obviously, SDA and Monkey show up, and everything turns to boobs. Everything's boobs. Let's see. Live chats are always about SDA. Well, I didn't talk about SDA in the last rant. I don't recall. I might have mentioned her offhand, but you see, the problem is that in talking about Jessica Jones with SDA earlier this week, that is what caused me to think of the similarities between the two shows, The Fall and Jessica Jones, because they are exceedingly similar in both characters and events and the how things resolve themselves. Except The Fall needs to take 17 hours to tell us this. Okay, so that was the end of season 1. It drove me nuts. I knew there was only one way this could go. I knew there was only one way this entire thing could go to actually justify a whole other season. Because as soon as she gives him everything he needs to identify who she's talking about, because, I mean, how many people in college did he date that knew him as Peter? How many people did he interact with that, choked or did this or did that, or at that particular college? Maybe he only dated one girl. I mean, our detective doesn't know the extent of our killer's experience or his history or anything else. She gives him everything she has on him, everything that can identify an innocent victim. So, what happens? Well, what do you think happens? Our witness, after our detective does this, the very first thing that should happen is that our witness, Rose Stagg, should be put under lock and key 24/7 around the clock until the killer is caught. Because now she is a target. She has been made a target by our detective. Our detective whose mandate is to protect and serve. Or maybe that's just the American phrase. I don't know if that's the Britain thing. But I'm pretty sure that the police force in Britain, or the police departments in Britain, aren't in the habit of putting innocent people into danger. Oh, wait, Rotherham. Anyway, our witness should be under lock and key. So what happens in the first part of the second season? Well, amazingly enough, somehow, some way, our serial killer comes back to town several weeks or a month later or something, and kidnaps our victim. Yep, kidnaps our one witness. Gosh, how did he know where to find her? How did he know who she was? I don't know. Gosh, maybe because the detective told him. Yeah. Now, when this happens, you would think, I mean, when the star detective, when the person that the police department has put forward as the lead detective on finding the serial killer goes and tells the serial killer the identity of the one witness who might be able to identify him and lead to a capture, etc. When she does this, you would think she'd lose her job. You would think that she would be losing her job, that she would be run out on a rail, because she's not even part of this community. She's being brought in from elsewhere to help on this case. So some carpetbagger shows up, gives a serial killer information that would tend to identify a witness, and that witness is then kidnapped by said serial killer, probably to be killed. You'd think she'd lose her job. Nope. She's scolded a bit by our weenie ACC Burns, who is beholden to her because, he's still in love with her and everything. But no, she still has her job. Yeah, sure. She's still working the case. It makes perfect sense. Yeah. Okay. What else happens in season 2? Well, our witness is held captive for quite a while, tortured, etc. Finding her, rescuing her, is the main thrust of season 2, along with trying to find our killer. Then the babysitter shows back up. The babysitter who was driven off in fear and heartbreak and everything else, and sort of has reason to believe, if I'm not mistaken, by the second season, that maybe he is the killer. I think she found something or had some notion that he was a dangerous person. And she still has that notion in season 2 for about 5 minutes. And then somehow, some way, our killer turns her into his disciple. It's a very, very badly written heel turn for our babysitter, who was once afraid of this man, but now is like his little worshiper. And he has her do things for him that help him in his eluding authorities, and so on and so on. I'm generalizing now. I'm not going to go over every detail. Uh, I do recommend, before I go on, I do recommend watching the first season. As much as I have panned the ending, and you'll see why if you watch the first season, it's actually pretty good up until the end, especially in the parts regarding our villain. It's actually pretty good. I was genuinely intrigued. And if for no other reason than to see the parallels between Jessica Jones and this show that came out several years before Jessica Jones, might be worth watching just to see, how this works. Because Jessica Jones was hailed as having, strong female character, and The Fall was hailed for having a strong female character. And the mechanisms necessary for the theory behind how to create a strong female character run very close to each other in both shows, which have completely different subjects, are constructed completely differently, but seem to attempt to do the same thing. And I just find that interesting by itself. Let's see. Going up again. Monkey, I need a video topic. I should be working. Hey, Monkey, take the latter half of that vagina interview thing that I didn't do. I mean, there's a lot of people didn't even know that was there. I mean, if people want to like take the vagina interview and do something with that, that'd be funny. But more Marvel talk, Scribe. No, Joys, I'm actually not. I'm referencing some Marvel stuff, but I'm talking about a different series. Let's see. What else? You always talk about your next section. Oh, you're talking to Monkey now. Oh, I see. You're talking to Monkey. All right, fine. I'll just keep talking. This is for posterity. So as our second season proceeds, our witness is captured. Our serial killer is back in town for some reason. I mean, first off, he had to capture his victim, right? Because she's the only witness who can identify him. But rather than just kill her and get it over with, which would make sense for a killer that wants to get away, he keeps her alive. And he continues to operate back in town by making the babysitter his disciple and playing cat and mouse with Stella Gibson. For whatever reason. Oh, God. And there's drama with his wife and the back and forth of their relationship while he's being a serial killer, but also trying to maintain a family. And then Stella Gibson is still Ice Queen, somehow still retaining her job. She has a one-night stand with another detective that leads to nothing except for this secondary one-night stand allows Stella to give a speech to her one-night stand about the natural evils of men. I couldn't quote the speech to save my life, but it struck me because it was so pointedly lecturing to this guy who had just slept with her, and they were discussing the case or something, and she just lectures the hell out of him about the aspects of men and how men work like this and serial killers and so on. And it was just like, okay, well, if I didn't have any notion that this was supposed to be some kind of feminist-oriented show, especially through the representation of this character, I know it now. So there's this kooky cat and mouse game trying to track down the killer again, although this time it's far more sort of Jason Bourne than it is Prime Suspect, because there's a lot of action involved, chase scenes and stuff like that, and computers and yada, yada, yada. And by the end of it, after a whole bunch of drama, our killer is shot in the woods where he had taken our victim, who is just barely alive in a trunk of a car. And Stella Gibson, after the shootout, which has a police officer wounded at one end of the road and our serial killer wounded at the other end of the road, who does Stella Gibson go to give aid? The serial killer. Yeah, the cop is just left lying and bleeding to death over there. But our serial killer, yeah, he is her focus. And then there's some notion that over the course of this investigation, between the cat and mouse, that there's some weird relationship, some kind of weird attraction between Stella Gibson and Paul Spector, the killer. This is inserted into the narrative very late in the game, and then most especially into season 3, which doesn't make any sense. Absolutely doesn't make any sense. But okay, sure, why not? Yeah, our detective is weirdly falling in love with our killer, a la Clarice Starling and Hannibal Lecter, I guess. Maybe. Whatever. And then we come to season 3. Season 3, which was probably the most ridiculously dumb thing I have ever watched. We spend an entire episode, an entire episode, going through trying to save the serial killer's life. Now, I don't mean like that's the narrative of the thing. I'm talking about we watch a hospital room and every finely detailed motion about trying to save someone's life who has been the victim of a gunshot wound. You know, the kind of stuff that you would see in sort of like a montage on an episode of House. No, we basically just put a camera over a table and they spend 45 minutes just watching the doctors do all the medical procedures involved in a gunshot wound. Now, as an educational piece, I guess, it's interesting. As something that moves along the narrative of the show, it does nothing. And as I was watching this, I thought, okay, when are they going to cut away to something? Or when are we going to go to something else? But we don't. We just watch them trying to save this guy's life. So our villain is captured. Our victim is alive, barely. You know, so they're both in the same hospital for some fucking reason. Why you would do that, I don't know. He's under lock and key, thankfully, but he's also unconscious. When he wakes up, he claims amnesia. And the question that isn't even a question for the entire 3rd season is he making it up or not? I wonder. I wonder which one it is. And so this narrative is dragged out for an extra 6 episodes, an extra 6 hours on the question of whether or not he can't remember ever being a serial killer. He can't remember his children. He can't remember any of this stuff. Our victim is in the hospital. She's, you know, understandably traumatized. And our detective is just there, kind of dealing with the fallout, hoping that they can sort of convict him. So hoping they can get the evidence necessary to put it all together. Prove that he is who he is. Because now if he's going to claim amnesia, they can't interrogate him and get a confession. So they have to, you know, actually build a case on the guy. And there's one scene that really pisses me off of the 3rd season, aside from so much else. There's a moment where Stella Gibson asks her assistant to go to her hotel room and pick up some papers. I mean, this is a very pointed little scene. And we see her assistant arrive at the hotel, gather the papers, and then leave. And that's it. Nothing happens. It's not like she went up there to gather some papers and discovered something that pushed the plot forward. It's not that her asking her assistant to go get some papers could have just been an isolated comment that had no follow-up at all just because it was just procedural stuff. No, they take the time to film this woman arriving at this hotel, going up the stairs, going to the room, gathering the papers, and leaving the hotel for nothing. It is 6 minutes of nothing to fill up part of an episode. It was at that point I knew the writer ran out of steam. There's only one way this can go now, because we're not going to have season 4, the trial of Paul Spector, right? It doesn't make any sense. There's only one way this can go. So I was just waiting. I was waiting for somebody to kill him. That was the only resolution we were going to get. There wasn't going to be a trial. There wasn't going to be any justice system stuff. We weren't going to have Law and Order, The Fall, or anything like that. Because we've spent 2.5 seasons by that point chasing him. And still, even after they've caught him, they're still chasing him because he has amnesia. So they still have to build a case absent him as a factor in the whole process. And by the end of season 3, yeah, he's secured in jail and he kills himself. The end. And yeah, that's it. I mean, it's Purple Man all over again. There's no other way to go with this story other than the guy has to die. Completely unfulfilling, completely ridiculous, and the entire second and third seasons would never have happened if Stella Gibson had not told him who the witness was. Yeah, season 2 and season 3 are entirely fruits of the poison tree of the end of season 1. And the end of season 1 made no sense. Hurt my brain, still makes me mad. And that's why I'm here this morning. Let's see. Who else we got on the chat right now? Let's see. Requiem for the Suicided Kenneth Trenatu. Oh, well, hello, Carlos, by the way. I don't know what that is. Angela, I'm listening. Scribe never saw this show, though. Sounds like I need to check out the first season. Again, yeah, the first season is an interesting... I mean, it's good up to a point. I do not recommend watching anything after that, unless you're just direly curious to see how things play out, because it is really a waste of 17 hours at that point. Kat says, watch Under the Skin. I've heard about that one. That's got Scarlett Johansson in it, doesn't it? And Antonio Banderas. What's my top 5 crime shows? If we're talking like, detective type shows, well, if we're talking like crime dramas and my favorite TV show that's a crime show is The Shield. By far and away, The Shield. Not everybody likes it. I think it's one of the best shows ever made. Almost equal to that, but only slightly. I'm probably equal to that, actually, Breaking Bad. But if you're talking about like detective shows, my favorite probably has to be a British show called Cracker. And of course, Cracker means something different in the context than what we use it here in America. It means, cracking a suspect, getting them to talk, getting them to confess. It stars Robbie Coltrane, who plays Hagrid in Harry Potter, if that's the reference you need. And the first series of Cracker, actually the first 2 or 3 series of Cracker are excellent. I mean, just noir, gritty, excellent. Robbie Coltrane is a brilliant actor. The way the stories were constructed and the characters and the reality of it all was just great. The stories tend to get a bit more ridiculous as the series go on. I think series 4 and 5 are probably my least favorite, but 1 and 2 are just amazing, especially 2, To Be a Somebody. Holy cow, what a great show. And also has Christopher Eccleston in it back when he was a baby. I mean, it's got a lot of really good actors in there and a lot of really good writing. So I highly recommend Cracker seasons 1 and 2 if you can find them. Sub to that, probably Prime Suspect. Helen Mirren plays, oh God, I forget the character's name all of a sudden. It's on the tip of my tongue. It'll come to me. But anyway, the first couple seasons of that as well, excellent. Just excellent TV shows. Next to that, probably the Jeremy Brent Sherlock Holmes series from PBS. I'm pretty sure the BBC produced it, but I saw it on PBS with my mother during the Mystery. They had this series just called Mystery, and so they'd have these series of things like that. Gosh, other detective shows? Oh, God. All You Need says, I remember Kojak. Yeah, my favorite, Cagney and Lacey. Oh man, Cagney and Lacey, boy, those two ladies sure knew how to fight crime. Oh man. Now here's the thing. Do you think actually they have done Cagney and Lacey modern versions. There was that what was that show? Something in Isles. I forget the first name, the name of the other characters. Like something the last name of the other character was Isles. I think it had Angie Harmon in it. I never watched it, but it was like a TNT show or something. But yeah, Cagney and Lacey, yeah. Yeah, Cracker. Yeah, Robert Carlyle. That's the name I was thinking of. Season 2 of Cracker called "To Be a Somebody," or at least that's the head title of it. The villain was played by Robert Carlyle brilliantly. I mean, this is before I knew him in. I think this was before Train Spotting, and I know it was before Ravenous. And if you haven't seen Ravenous, you want to see Robert Carlyle be an absolute badass bad guy. Watch Ravenous. Oh God, I love that movie. Oh yeah, Rizzoli and Isles. That was it. Yes. Scribe favorite monster movies: The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing. Probably my favorite monster movie of all time. Still is. I mean, that movie still works even after all these years. The effects. The only weak part in the entire movie, effects wise, is at the very end where there's some stop motion, which was unnecessary as far as I'm concerned. They could have found a way to do it practical and still made it work, forced perspective or something. But other than that, everything about that movie is A plus. Let's see, Spencer for Hire. Let's see, Starsky and Hutch. Well, if you call them, I mean, are those crime shows? I guess, I suppose they had to do with crime, you know. I still have to catch up on Miami Vice. I never watched that as a kid. I think it's on Netflix. I should probably watch that. I mean, I saw so many things that were inspired by it. Remington Steele. Oh, jeez. Okay, Mike Hammer. Okay, you want a really good crime show that's like noir, gritty, and worked? Stacy Keach as Mike Hammer. That series was great. Just the way he operated. He was such a cool jerk to watch. It was so good. Yeah, Mike Hammer. Magnum PI, Chips. Oh, don't talk about Chips around Monkey. Oh, we'll have it out. We'll have it out. Scribelight, have you seen Monk? I have seen Monk. I've seen a couple episodes of that. I didn't have cable. I had to see it through like, excuse me. A friend of mine had the DVD collection. Pardon me a second. My voice is starting to fail me. Let me get a drink here so I don't completely die on you. Beretta, Heart to Heart. Oh God. Heart to Heart. How about the Scarecrow and Mrs. King? I mean, if we're gonna go that far back. Well, okay. So anyway, that's basically my entire spiel on the fall. Promising start. Completely ridiculous ending to the first season, and everything that followed from that was just an absolute shit show of bad writing. It really felt like the writer wrote himself into a corner at the end of the first season, because you can't have the killer kid caught, I should say, the killer caught, and everything after that was like, well, he has to die, because unless this is going to turn into a courtroom drama halfway through, and since the audience has already watched him do the stuff, all we'd be doing in a courtroom drama is just going over everything we've already seen as an audience. There's only one way this can go, unless they have him like the other notion I had in mind, which would have been as bad as him just killing himself and getting away with it effectively, would be like they show him, behind bars in a cell, and then they have a title card over that says 6 months later, Paul Spector was convicted of 17 counts. Some stupid like that. But they didn't do that. That would have been just as bad. Scribe, did you like the A-Team TV show? I did. I loved it as a kid. I loved it. Looking back on the shows now, they're kind of cheese, but I love the camaraderie between the characters, and especially in the later season when they get basically contracted out by the government, with Robert Vaughn being their boss, especially when the soundtrack to the opening music changed with a little bit of guitar and synthesizer to it. I always thought that was really cool. But yeah, when they became agents, there's one episode in particular of the A-Team, to go completely off base for a second, where Murdoch is working as a waiter in a restaurant, and there's a burglary that occurs in the restaurant, and Murdoch is wounded, and he's wounded in the restaurant, and the team doesn't know about it, and it's actually an amazingly tense, well-written episode that doesn't have a whole lot of A-Team type action to it. It's actually a very, very tense drama. I always remember that episode because, God, and now I'm forgetting the name of the guy who plays Murdoch. How the hell can I do that? He's the same guy who played Barkley in Star Trek, and now I'm sure the chat will help me, but Man, if you remember that episode or can find that episode where it's later in the series, it's like I think the last season somewhere. Let's see, Hawaii Five O with Jack Lord. Oh God, yeah. Is there going to be an A-Team remake? Well, there already was an A-Team movie, for crying out loud, with like Bradley Cooper and Liam Neeson. It was about on par with an episode of the actual TV show. It was entertaining. I've only watched it the one time. I'd watch it again, maybe, but it was pretty bad. It was just kind of cheese. Dwight Schultz, yes, thank you, Scotch. Oh God, I can do character names to the end of time, but actually trying to remember actors' names sometimes just makes me go ugh. Okay. Well, anyway, that was all. As I've said previously, that was all I had to say about the fall. Unless there's something else you guys would like to talk about, or unless Monkey or SDA or Amanda want to come on for a few minutes and chat about something. Otherwise, I should probably not waste your guys' time anymore if I don't have anything else to say about the fall. Let's see, Mr. T. Yeah, Mr. T. I like the Mr. T cartoon show. That was always fun. Him and his acrobatics or gymnast team of kids running around solving crimes. That was always fun. Yes, Donald. Train Spotting 2. I haven't seen Train Spotting 2. Train Spotting 1 is great. Let's see. Amanda can't come on. She's not at home. Okay. What else? Cheeses of Nazareth. I don't even know what's that mentioning to. That's a great name. If that's a real thing, man, I want some product from the Cheeses of Nazareth. Oh my God. All right. I'll give it another minute here if anybody wants to ask any questions or throw out anything. Have you seen the Smurfs? Of course I've seen the Smurfs. I watched the Smurfs all the time as a kid. The Snorks are just the Smurfs underwater. Mm. Mod Squad. Oh yes. Clarence Howard no, Clarence Howard the third or Terrence Howard the third? Anyway, Clarence Williams. Sorry, Clarence Williams the third, who was Link on the Mod Squad. He was the bad guy in Half Baked. He played Samson. And he was also in a movie, an anthology horror movie called Tales from the Hood. And he played the mortuary owner or caretaker or whatever, who was sort of the narrator of these stories. And the loose arching plot of that movie was there was these drug dealers who showed up at this funeral home thinking that there were drugs in the funeral home. And so as the funeral home director guy played by Clarence Williams III is sort of leading them around, he's telling them these stories that ultimately culminates in the end of the movie where they finally get upset with this guy that he's just wasting time, that he's trying to set them up for something. So they hold guns on him and they're like, give us the shit, man. They're looking for the drugs. And Clarence Williams gets this crazy grin on his face. He looks at them and he goes, "Ah, yes, the shit. Oh, you'll get the shit." And then he turns into Satan and takes them to hell. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Oh, God. The Equalizer. Oh, yes. All you need. You're right. Yes. The Equalizer TV show. If you want to see the best opening sequence to any TV show of the 80s, look up the opening theme music and sequence to The Equalizer. It always creeped me out as a kid. It was the music and the scenery and the way it's edited together. Oh, it's so good. The movie version, Denzel, not so much. We should get together on SDA's channel tonight. Sure, we can do that. If you were talking to me, Monkey, I don't know. I'd have to scroll up. Maybe you're talking to somebody else. Maybe you don't like me anymore. That could be it. Have a great day, Scribe. You too, Angela. Your favorite anime? My favorite anime? Probably Trigun. That was the one I watched the most of in college. Most entertaining. I don't watch a lot of anime. I've seen bits and pieces. Have I seen Captain Planet? Of course I've seen Captain Planet. We're the Planeteers. You can be one too, because saving the planet is the thing to do. Looting and polluting's not the way. Here's what Captain Planet has to say. The power is yours. course I was talking to you. Well, I don't, I don't want to make assumptions. That's just monkey loves you, Scribe. I appreciate the monkey love. Yeah. Dragnet. Oh, well, that's a classic. Yes. Jack Webb. God, Dragnet. And actually, one of the better movie versions, too, because they didn't take themselves seriously. Tom Hanks and Dan Aykroyd. That was a great movie. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, guys, I'm going to call it there. I've covered the fall and a whole bunch of other stuff. Apparently, hopefully tonight, Monkey and SDA and I'll gather on her channel and kibitz a bit. But thank you all for coming out. Appreciate the attention and the questions and tidbits and everything else. Again, this is probably not going to become a regular thing. It just happened to be the case that last week's discussion and then my discussion with SDA on Jessica Jones just sparked this other complaint I had in my mind. So now if people want me to talk about stuff on Sunday mornings, I could probably find something, but I feel like it's much more energetic and genuine if it's something that's really stuck in my craw that I want to talk about. But either way, thanks for coming out, guys. Hope to see you soon. And I'm going to be working on a new video here pretty quick. That should be a long form one based on what I have, and I hope you like it. So anyway, take care and have a good Sunday.